My son thought I didn't notice when he hid an envelope under my truck dashboard. He thought age had softened me, dulled my edges, made my eyes slide past the small things. He believed the quiet was ignorance. That silence meant permission. What he didn't know, what he forgot, is that my entire life has been built on noticing what doesn't belong. I didn't confront him. I didn't ask questions. I didn't raise my voice. I switched the envelope, closed the panel, and waited. Thank you for being here. Truly. Before this story continues, I want to know who's listening. Leave a comment with your city or country so I can see how far these words travel. And one thing more, before we begin, some details in this story have been dramatized for storytelling and educational purposes. Names and locations are fictional, but the lesson is real, lived, and earned. The morning I found the envelope, the air was cold enough to sting my lungs. The kind of cold that creeps under your jacket and settles in your bones. I stood in my driveway staring at my old pickup, a 2014 Chevy Silverado that had hauled more lumber, gravel, and broken dreams than I could count. The sky was low and gray, pressing down on the neighborhood like a held breath. I had my coffee in one hand, steam curling upward, and my keys in the other. Evan had returned the truck late the night before. He always did lately. He'd parked it crooked, nose too close to the curb, wheels turned just enough to annoy me. That was Evan's signature, careless, rushed, always moving on to the next thing without finishing the last. I chalked it up to youth once. Now I knew better. I opened the driver's side door, and the smell hit me first. Not oil or sawdust or the faint sweetness of the pine air freshener I kept clipped to the vent. This was sharp. Paper. Ink. Nervous sweat. The smell of something that wanted to be hidden. I climbed in and set my coffee in the cup holder. As I reached down to adjust the steering wheel, I saw it. The plastic panel beneath the dashboard wasn't seated right. One corner jutted out, no more than a few millimeters. To anyone else, it was nothing. To me, it was a shout. I've been a mechanic for 42 years. I've rebuilt engines from rusted blocks, chased electrical gremlins through dashboards, listened to vibrations no one else could hear. You learn to trust the small things. You learn that machines don't lie, people do. I knelt on the cold concrete and reached up beneath the dash. My fingers brushed metal, wires, dust. Then paper. Thick. Folded. Tucked where it didn't belong. I pulled it free slowly, my heart steady, my breathing calm. It was a large manila envelope, the kind used for legal documents. It was heavy. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I already knew. I sat there for a long moment, the door open, the cold seeping in, my coffee forgotten. The house behind me was silent. The neighborhood was waking up, distant doors closing, a dog barking, a car starting somewhere down the street. Life moving on, unaware that something had just shifted. I stood up, tucked the envelope under my jacket, and walked across the driveway to Evan's car. A black sedan he leased because it fit his image. I used the spare key I'd kept since he moved out. The glove compartment opened with a soft click. Inside were receipts, fast food wrappers, and overdue insurance notice. I slid the envelope in, pushed it all the way back, and closed the compartment. Then I locked the car and went back inside. I made another cup of coffee. I sat at the kitchen table and watched the clock on the microwave tick forward. I didn't call anyone. Not yet. I waited. 27 minutes later, red and blue lights washed across my living room walls. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand why a father would do something like this, you need to understand the years that led up to it. The slow erosion. The small compromises. The way love can make you blind until it doesn't. My name is Thomas Hale. I'm 63 years old. I've lived in this town my entire life. I raised 2 kids in this house, fixed neighbors' cars for cash and casseroles, paid my taxes, and kept my head down. I believed in honest work. Still do. My son Evan is 36. He's smart, charming, and always just one step ahead, or so he thought. He worked in logistics, or at least that's what he told people. Moving goods, he'd say with a grin. He wore nice jackets and always seemed short on time. His phone never stopped buzzing. He called it hustle. I called it running. The first sign came months earlier, though I didn't recognize it then. Evan borrowed my truck to help a friend move. He brought it back the next day, thanked me, and left. When I got in later, the trip meter read 387 miles. Moving across town doesn't take 387 miles. I asked him about it casually. He laughed it off. Took the long way. You know me. I smiled and let it go. That was my mistake. Over the next few weeks, he borrowed the truck more often. Always returned it late. Always avoided eye contact. Once, I found a torn latex glove under the seat. Another time, a cheap prepaid phone wedged between the console and the seat rail. When I asked him, he got defensive. Told me to stop snooping. Told me I didn't trust him. He was right about one thing. I didn't. Not anymore. The night everything changed was the night my granddaughter came into it. Lily. 8 years old. All elbows and questions and unfiltered honesty. Evan had brought her over for dinner. She ran through the house like she owned it, laughter bouncing off the walls. I cooked spaghetti. We ate. Evan barely touched his plate. After dinner, Lily asked if she could play in the garage. I said yes. Evan stiffened. She doesn't need to be in there, he said quickly. Too quickly. Lily frowned. But Grandpa lets me help him, she said. I looked at Evan. He looked away. Later, after they left, I went into the garage. Everything looked normal at first glance. Tools where they belonged. Floor swept. Then I noticed the toolbox drawer slightly ajar. Inside, beneath a rag, was another envelope. Smaller. This one I opened. Cash. More than I'd ever seen in one place. No bank bands. Just rubber bands and the faint smell of ink. That night, I didn't sleep. 2 days later, the school called. Mr. Hale, the woman on the phone said, her voice tight. There's been an incident involving your granddaughter. We need you to come in. My heart pounded as I drove. Every red light felt like an accusation. When I arrived, they led me to a small office. Lily sat there, feet dangling, eyes red. On the table was her backpack. Pink, with a cartoon cat on it. The counselor spoke softly. Lily brought something to school today that doesn't belong there. I opened the backpack with shaking hands. Inside was another envelope. This one was thinner. Still heavy. Lily looked up at me. Daddy said it was important, she whispered. He said not to tell anyone. That was the moment something inside me went cold. Not angry. Not panicked. Cold. Clear. I took Lily home with me that day. Told Evan she was sick. He didn't argue. He was too busy. That night, he came by to return the truck. He looked exhausted. Hollow-eyed. He handed me the keys and asked if he could borrow it again in the morning. Just one more thing, he said. Then I'm done. I nodded. Sure, I said. Go get some rest. After he left, I went straight to the truck. That's when I found the envelope under the dashboard. I called no one that night. I sat in the dark and listened to the house settle. I thought about my wife, gone 5 years now. About the promises we made to keep our kids safe. About how safety sometimes looks like betrayal. In the morning, I switched the envelope. I didn't know exactly what was in it. I didn't need to. I knew enough. And I knew what would happen next. Evan came back 20 minutes later, keys jingling, coffee in hand. He waved, got into his car, and drove off. I waited. The police arrived just after 7. Quiet. Efficient. They blocked the driveway, approached his car, and found what they were looking for. I watched from the window as they took him away. He looked up once. Our eyes met. There was confusion there. Then understanding. Then something like relief. I didn't wave. I didn't hide. I just stood there. Lily slept through it all. The days that followed were heavy. Lawyers. Questions. Silence. Evan didn't speak to me for weeks. When he finally did, it was from behind glass. He was furious. Hurt. Broken. You ruined my life, he said. I shook my head. I saved it. He didn't believe me then. Time passed. Lily stayed with me. Evan went away. The house was quiet again, but it was a different quiet. A healing one. Years later, Evan came home. Not the same man who left. Softer. Stronger. Honest. He apologized one night, voice cracking, hands shaking. I didn't say much. I didn't need to. We sat on the porch and watched the sun go down. Lily chased fireflies in the yard. You noticed, Evan said finally. You always notice. I nodded. That's my job. As I tell this story now, I don't pretend it was easy. I don't pretend I didn't lose sleep, or that the choice didn't haunt me. But I know this, love isn't always gentle. Sometimes it's firm. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it looks like letting the consequences do their work. If you're still listening, thank you. If this story stirred something in you, share it. Talk about it. And if you're facing a choice like mine, don't wait for the damage to spread. Notice the small things. They matter more than you think. Thank you for staying with me until the end. The first winter after Evan was taken away was the quietest this house had ever known. Snow came early that year, thick and heavy, piling against the porch steps and muting every sound. I spent my mornings shoveling the driveway and my evenings sitting by the window, watching the streetlights glow through falling flakes. Lily stayed with me full-time then. She slept in the room that used to be her father's, the one with the crooked closet door and the faint smell of old books. Some nights she cried in her sleep. Some nights she didn't sleep at all. She never asked where her father was. Children don't always ask the questions they're afraid to hear answered. Instead, she asked smaller things. If I'd pack her lunch. If I'd braid her hair. If I'd sit on the edge of the bed until she fell asleep. Those requests were heavier than any envelope I'd ever held. Every Sunday afternoon, I drove 2 hours to visit Evan. The prison sat low and wide against a backdrop of bare trees and razor wire, a place designed to erase time. The first few visits were brutal. He refused to look at me. He spoke through clenched teeth, bitterness pouring out in sharp bursts. He blamed me for everything, his arrest, his lost job, the looks from other inmates when they found out what he'd done. I listened. I let him say it all. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I'd learned that lesson years ago working on engines that fought back. Sometimes the only way forward is to let the pressure bleed off. On the 5th visit, something changed. He looked tired. Not angry tired, empty tired. He stared at his hands like they belonged to someone else. They said she's safe, he muttered. They said Lily's okay. She is, I said. She's doing well in school. She still hates math. Loves drawing. He nodded slowly, swallowing hard. I didn't mean to drag her into it. I know, I said, though part of me still burned. But you did. Silence settled between us. Thick. Honest. That was the first time he cried. Outside of those visits, life kept moving in small, stubborn ways. Lily grew taller. Her laughter came back in pieces, then fully. She made friends. She brought home drawings taped with crooked smiles and hearts. On the fridge, One picture stayed longer than the rest, a stick figure family, 3 people holding hands. Grandpa. Daddy. Me. I worked less as the years went on. My hands weren't as steady. My back complained more loudly. But I stayed busy. Fixing neighbors' cars. Teaching Lily how to change a tire, how to listen for the click when a bolt seats properly. She learned fast. Too fast sometimes. One evening, while we were cleaning up the garage, she found an old envelope in the back of a drawer. Empty. Yellowed with age. She picked it up and frowned. "Why do people hide things?" she asked. I wiped my hands on a rag and thought about it. "Sometimes they're scared," I said. "Sometimes they think hiding makes problems smaller." "Does it?" she asked. "No," I said. "It usually makes them heavier." She nodded like that made sense, then went back to sweeping. Years passed that way. Slow. Uneventful. Healing in increments so small they were almost invisible. Evan started taking responsibility inside. He enrolled in classes. He worked in the prison garage. Grease under his nails again. Honest dirt. When he talked about engines, his voice sounded like it used to when he was a teenager, explaining how something worked just because he loved knowing. On one visit, he leaned forward and said, "I found the panel under the dash. After I realized what you did. I waited. I hated you for it," he continued. "Still do sometimes. I know. But," he hesitated. "If you hadn't, I don't think I'd be alive." That was enough. The day he came home, the sky was clear and bright. Too bright for something so heavy. Lily waited on the porch, bouncing on her toes. When Evan stepped out of the car, thinner, quieter, she ran to him without hesitation. Wrapped her arms around his waist like nothing had ever broken. I stood back and watched. Some repairs you don't rush. Later that night, after Lily went to bed, Evan and I sat at the kitchen table. The same table where I'd once slid a phone across the wood and asked him to explain. He looked around the room like he was seeing it for the first time. "You still have the truck?" he asked. I smiled faintly. "Of course." He nodded. "I don't think I'm ready to drive it yet." "That's okay," I said. "It'll wait." He looked at me then, really looked. "You didn't do it to punish me." "No. You did it because you noticed." "Yes." He let out a long breath, shoulders sagging. "Thank you." We didn't hug. We didn't need to. Some understanding doesn't require touch. Now, when I think back to that morning in the driveway, the cold, the smell of paper, the weight of that envelope, I don't see myself as brave. I see myself as careful. As someone who paid attention when it mattered most. If there's anything I've learned, it's this: love isn't blind. Love sees clearly and chooses anyway. It notices the loose panel, the extra miles, the silence that doesn't fit. And sometimes, love makes a choice that looks cruel from the outside but saves everything that matters. If you're still here, still listening, I want you to know something. You don't have to be loud to be strong. You don't have to be young to be sharp. And you don't have to be perfect to do the right thing. Notice the small things. They're rarely small. There's a strange moment that comes after the crisis has passed, after the noise fades and the dust settles, when you're left alone with your own thoughts. For me, it came a few weeks after Evan returned home. The house was asleep. Lily's door was closed, a soft nightlight glowing beneath it. Evan had gone to bed early, exhausted from a long day at the garage. I sat alone at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug that had long gone cold, listening to the refrigerator hum. I realized then that saving someone doesn't end when the danger does. It just changes shape. Evan tried hard. I could see it in the way he woke up before dawn, in the way he scrubbed his hands raw after work, as if he could wash off the past along with the grease. He went to meetings twice a week. Sometimes he came home quiet, jaw tight, eyes distant. Other nights, he talked too much, words spilling out like he was afraid silence might drag him backward. I didn't hover. I didn't lecture. I learned that lesson the hard way. You can't rebuild a man the same way you rebuild an engine by forcing parts into place. You lay everything out. You clean what's salvageable. You replace what's broken. And then you let it run, listening carefully for what still rattles. One evening, Lily came into the garage while Evan and I were working on the Silverado. The hood was up, the engine exposed like a chest cracked open. Evan was explaining something about the alternator, his voice calm, steady, the way it hadn't been in years. "Daddy," Lily said, tugging on his sleeve. "Can I help?" He froze for half a second. Just long enough for me to see the fear flash across his face. Then he nodded. "Sure, kiddo. Hand me that wrench." She beamed. Watching them there, bent over the engine together, something tightened in my chest. Not pain. Gratitude. This ordinary moment was the future I'd gambled everything for. Later that night, after Lily had gone to bed, Evan sat on the back steps staring out into the dark yard. I joined him, lowering myself down with a grunt my knees insisted on announcing. "You ever think about that envelope?" he asked quietly. "Sometimes," I said. "I do," he admitted. "More than I want to. I keep thinking, if you hadn't noticed. If you'd ignored it like I hoped you would." I didn't answer right away. The night air was cool, carrying the faint smell of cut grass and oil. "You wouldn't have stopped," I said finally. "Not on your own." He nodded. "I know." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said something that surprised me. "I used to think you did it because you didn't believe in me." I turned and looked at him. "I did it because I did." He frowned. "Because you believed in me?" "Because I believed in who you could still be," I said. "And because I believed Lily deserved better than the man you were becoming." His shoulders slumped. He pressed his palms together, elbows on his knees, and stared at the ground. "I was angry for so long," he said. "Angry at you. Angry at myself. Angry at everyone who didn't stop me sooner." "Anger's easier than guilt," I said. He let out a short, humorless laugh. "Yeah." Time moved forward the way it always does, quietly, without asking permission. Lily turned 9, then 10. Evan earned back small pieces of trust. A borrowed errand here. A late night at work without suspicion. I watched him carefully, not with fear, but with the same attention I'd always given machines that mattered. I listened. I noticed. One afternoon, while cleaning out the cab of the truck, I found the loose panel again. The one that started it all. I snapped it firmly back into place, the clip seating with a clean, satisfying click. Solid. Proper. That night, I told Evan about it. He swallowed. "I don't want to forget," he said. "What I almost lost." "You won't," I said. "But you also can't live there." He nodded slowly. Sometimes, late at night, I think about the version of myself who almost didn't act. The man who could have looked away. Who could have chosen comfort over courage. I understand him now. I forgive him. But I'm grateful I didn't let him win. Because noticing saved my family. If you've stayed with me this long, I hope you hear this clearly: the small things are never just small things. They're warnings. Invitations. Chances. And when you see them, really see them, you're being asked to choose. The right choice won't always feel kind. It won't always feel safe. But if it protects the future at the cost of your comfort, it's probably the one that matters. I noticed. And because I did, we're still here. There's a kind of peace that settles in after everything has been said, after every accusation has burned itself out and all that's left is truth. It doesn't arrive with relief. It arrives quietly, like a tool placed back on the peg where it belongs. That peace came to me one early morning, months after Evan's return, when I found myself standing in the driveway again before the sun was up. The truck was parked straight this time. Perfectly straight. Evan had done it the night before without thinking, muscle memory guided by respect instead of hurry. I noticed that too. I always notice. I opened the door and sat behind the wheel, not to go anywhere, just to sit. The cab smelled like oil and coffee again. Familiar. Honest. I rested my hands on the steering wheel and closed my eyes, listening to the quiet tick of cooling metal. For the first time in a long while, my chest didn't feel tight. Later that day, Lily came home from school holding a piece of folded paper like it was something precious. She placed it on the table in front of me and waited. I unfolded it carefully. Inside was a drawing, 3 figures again, but this time the lines were steadier, the faces clearer. Grandpa. Daddy. Me. Above us, in crooked letters, she'd written, safe. I looked up at her. What does this mean? I asked. She shrugged. It means we're okay. I nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Sometimes children say things adults spend years trying to articulate. Evan watched from the doorway. When our eyes met, there was no tension there anymore. Just understanding. He cleared his throat. I'm thinking about getting my own place, he said. Not far. I don't want to rush it. I want to do things right. You will, I said. Take your time. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat alone again, the house breathing around me. I thought about the man I used to be, the one who believed love meant shielding your children from consequences. I know better now. Love means preparing them to survive reality, even when that preparation hurts. I don't tell this story because I'm proud of the pain it caused. I tell it because pain isn't the enemy. Silence is. Neglect is. Looking away is. If you're hearing this and thinking of a moment you ignored, a detail you dismissed, a feeling you buried because it was inconvenient, I'm not here to judge you. I understand. Hope is seductive. It whispers that tomorrow will fix what today reveals. But tomorrow doesn't fix rot. Attention does. I'm an old man now. My hands ache. My knees complain. But my eyes are still sharp, and my conscience is clearer than it's ever been. If that makes me the villain in someone else's version of the story, I can live with that. Because in this version, my family is standing. So if you're still with me, still listening, remember this, doing nothing is also a choice. And sometimes, it's the most dangerous one of all. I noticed. I chose. And because of that choice, the story didn't end where it could have. It ended here. Even now, I sometimes catch myself replaying that morning in my head, not the fear, not the flashing lights, but the stillness right before the decision. The moment when I could have closed the door, finished my coffee, and pretended I hadn't seen anything at all. That moment lingers because it reminds me how close I came to choosing comfort over truth. Evan moved out the following spring. Just a small apartment a few miles away. Nothing fancy. He insisted on paying his own way, even when I offered help. We didn't talk every day anymore, and that was okay. Trust, I learned, isn't rebuilt by proximity. It's rebuilt by consistency. By showing up the same way, over and over, without excuses. Lily still spends most weekends here. She has a corner of the garage now with her own set of tools, plastic handles, real purpose. She likes to sit on an overturned bucket and ask questions while I work. Why does metal rust? Why do engines get hot? Why do people make bad choices even when they know better? Some questions don't have simple answers. But I never tell her not to ask. On quiet afternoons, when the house is empty and the light slants just right through the windows, I sometimes walk past the truck and run my hand along the dashboard. The panel is flush now. Secure. It hasn't shifted once. That detail matters to me more than it probably should. It's a reminder that things can be put back the right way if you take the time. I don't know how this story sounds to others. To some, I'll always be the father who crossed a line. The one who made an unforgivable choice. I've made peace with that. Stories change depending on who tells them. Consequences don't. What I do know is this: my son wakes up every morning sober. My granddaughter goes to school without carrying secrets too heavy for her small shoulders. And I can sit at my table at night without wondering what I chose not to see. That's enough for me. If this story leaves you unsettled, good. It should. Life doesn't hand us clean decisions wrapped in kindness. It hands us moments where noticing is the difference between loss and survival. Those moments don't announce themselves. They hide under dashboards. In extra miles. In silence. Pay attention. Because sometimes, the smallest thing you notice is the thing that saves everything. There's a habit I picked up after everything happened. Every night before I lock up, before I turn off the lights and head to bed, I walk through the house once. Slowly. I check the doors. I glance at the windows. I listen. Not because I'm afraid anymore, but because attention has become my way of honoring what we survived. Evan stops by sometimes in the evenings. Not announced. Just a knock, 2 short raps, the way he used to when he was a kid and wanted to see if I was in a good mood. We'll sit at the table, drink coffee, talk about nothing important. Work. Weather. Lily's drawings. Ordinary things. The kind of conversations you don't realize are priceless until you almost lose them. Once, during one of those quiet visits, he asked me something I could tell he'd been carrying for a long time. "Do you ever wish you'd done it differently?" he said. Not accusing. Just honest. I thought about it. About the nights I lay awake. About the look on his face when the cuffs went on. About the years we didn't get back. "No," I said. "I wish it hadn't been necessary. But I don't wish I'd looked away." He nodded, eyes fixed on the grain of the table. "I think," he said slowly, "that if you had, I'd be dead. Or worse." We didn't say anything after that. We didn't need to. Life didn't turn into something perfect. It rarely does. There were setbacks. Bad days. Moments when old habits tried to creep back in. But now, when something feels off, Evan talks about it. He doesn't hide. He doesn't tuck things into dark corners and hope no one notices. That's the real change. Not the absence of mistakes, but the presence of honesty. Lily knows this house as a place where truth is allowed to exist without punishment. Where questions don't get shut down. Where mistakes don't get buried. She still draws pictures of us together. Sometimes she draws the truck too. Always with the panel smooth and straight. As for me, I've stopped wondering whether I was right or wrong. That question belongs to people who believe there's always a clean answer. I believe in outcomes. In lives preserved. In futures that remain possible. I'm telling this now not because I want to be understood by everyone, but because somewhere, someone is standing in their own driveway, holding something that doesn't belong, telling themselves it's none of their business. Telling themselves it'll sort itself out. Telling themselves love means silence. It doesn't. Love notices. Love acts. Love accepts the cost. And if that makes me the villain in someone else's version of events, so be it. I'll carry that weight. I already have. Because when I turn out the lights at night, when the house is quiet and everyone inside it is safe, I know exactly why I chose what I chose. I noticed. I didn't look away. And because of that, this family is still standing. There's one last thing I haven't said out loud until now. Not to Evan. Not to Lily. Not even to myself, until the words finally settled into something I could carry. The hardest part wasn't switching the envelope. It wasn't making the call. It wasn't watching my son walk away in handcuffs. The hardest part was accepting that I couldn't save him without hurting him. For a long time, that truth sat in me like a stone. I used to think being a good father meant absorbing the damage so your child didn't have to feel it. Taking the hit. Covering the mess. Quietly fixing things behind the scenes. That belief almost destroyed everything I loved. What I learned too late, but not too late, is that shielding someone from consequences doesn't protect them. It delays the collapse. It lets the rot spread deeper, where it's harder to reach and more painful to remove. One afternoon, months after Evan moved into his own place, Lily asked me something that stopped me cold. "Grandpa," she said, swinging her legs from the porch step, "did you save Daddy?" I didn't answer right away. I watched her shoes scuff against the wood. I listened to the cicadas buzzing in the trees. I thought about the man Evan had been, the man he became, and the man he was still learning to be. "I didn't save him," I said finally. "I gave him a chance to save himself." She considered that. Then she nodded, like it fit into a place she already had inside her. "That's good," she said. "Because he's trying really hard." "Yes," I said. "He is." That night, after everyone was asleep, I went out to the garage and sat in the truck one last time. I ran my fingers along the dashboard, over the place where the panel once didn't fit. It was smooth. Solid. Right. I started the engine and listened. No rattles. No hesitation. Just the steady, honest sound of something doing exactly what it was built to do. I turned the key off and sat there in the dark, letting the silence settle. This story doesn't end with applause. It doesn't end with forgiveness wrapped in a bow. It ends the way most real stories do, with people still learning, still carrying scars, still choosing to show up the next day. If you've stayed with me all this way, I want you to understand something clearly. Noticing is not passive. Attention is not neutral. What you see, and what you choose to do with it, shapes the future in ways you may never fully understand. I didn't notice because I was special. I noticed because I was willing to look. And when the moment came, I chose action over comfort, truth over silence, and protection over approval. That choice cost me peace for a while. But it gave my family a future. And in the end, that was worth everything. This is where I stopped talking. Not because there's nothing left to say, but because some lessons lose their weight when they're explained too much. My son is alive. My granddaughter is safe. And the future, once cracked and splintering, is standing again, imperfect, but strong. I don't know how history will remember my choice. I don't know how Evan will tell this story someday, or if he ever will. I only know what I see now, a man who wakes up honest, a child who sleeps without fear, and a house that no longer holds secrets in its walls. If that makes me the villain in one version of the story, I accept it. Villains don't usually get to sit at the table and watch 3 generations breathe the same air in peace. I do. So if you're still here, still listening, take this with you and nothing more. Pay attention. Silence is not kindness. Love does not look away. Sometimes the smallest thing you notice is the moment everything changes. I noticed. I chose. And because of that choice, this story didn't end in a graveyard or a courtroom, it ended at home. Thank you for listening.